Good morning. My name is Antonella Caminati. I am a partner of Munich, Aragon, an office of Rio de Janeiro. I apologize because of my hoarse voice, but I did not want to miss this opportunity of being here today and moderating this panel. We're going to start with Felipe de Oliveira, who is the brands director of INPI. He is a civil engineer by training. He has an MBA my the from the Carlos Mendes University and a master's in ocean engineering and also public administration. And he was a student of WIPO awareness from the Patents Office of Japan at the INPI. He has been a coordinator of engineering and a disclosure coordinator. I'm very happy, as I was telling President Furtado, I never thought that INPI could reach the level of excellence that we witness today. So to speak about our good practices and good news, I'd like to give the floor to Felipe, if you may. Good morning to all of you. Thank you for introducing me, Antonella. On behalf of INPI, first of all, I'd like to thank the organizers for this invitation extended to me to make this lecture and to talk about current topics at DERMA, statistics, new in-house procedures, new regulations, proposals. I'm very proud to represent here today the civil servants at DERMA. This is a team of excellence. I had the pleasure and honor to lead this team about 4 months ago, leading major transformations in this area, which I would like to share with you here today. I'd like to start this presentation by going back to what we heard yesterday when Stafford Mays talked about the Kodak case. I was very taken by what he said because it is the message is that we have to understand what is going on out there, and Dr. Claudio has spoken about that. This transformation of our NPI, moving from a traditional office to a non-traditional office, performing non-traditional activities, is based on this philosophy of understanding the changes in the work environment, the business environment. And here I would like to very categorically speak about the intellectual property and brands and the growth and competitiveness of corporations. So I'm going to talk about 4 pillars which are fundamental to me, and they testify to the importance of intellectual property in this process of change of Brazilian companies in particular. We know how IP is important for financial matters, and in Stafford Mays' lecture yesterday, he showed how IP changed into the most important asset of companies, and we already knew that. Intangible assets are the elements that grant the greatest value. We moved out of the 70s when that accounted for 70% of companies' values, and in 2020 we have 90% of intangible assets that account for the value of these companies. So what INPI does today, and the vision we convey today in the marketing area, is to grant value to companies, to make them stand out in the market and do new businesses. There's the issue of HR. human resources. Brands are a very strong reason for hiring and retaining staff. There are many proposals that professionals are given to work in different companies, but sometimes they don't want to leave because they believe in the value or the brand value of a given institution. Brands are also a form of differentiation, and in marketing terms, the delivery principles out to consumers. And to speak about consumers, when I worked for INPI, I lived through two important moments, especially for consumers. The first one is when a consumer decides to buy. There's a program for leveraging IP use in Brazil, and we did this work of awareness and activation of demand, making and consumers and companies choose to use intellectual property systems in Brazil. So I know how painful this can be. And I think that today I can understand how consumers and our clients are using our services and become loyal. And we have many challenges. We talk to ABPI, to ABAP, and we see many opportunities for improvement of our institution. And one of the main challenges in our marketing area is to demystify the inexistence of competition. Stafford yesterday talked about competition, and that was very adequate, and that suits both the private and public sphere. And we have three vectors of competition if we are an agency that grants intellectual property. We have the issue of competition with other intellectual property offices, and this was something that was not very much taken into account by the INPI staff. But I think that in this administration, in the trademark department, we managed to internalize this idea that, yes, we compete with other intellectual property offices, and there are several indexes about this. There's the WIPO ranking index, there's WTR that ranked us in the 6th place as an innovation office. We have a competition, and Dr. Claudio talked about this yesterday, that is healthy, namely that for budget and financial resources, and that concerns the government realm. So we have to prove our maturity, governance, and actually be an organization oriented to results, to be heard and differentiated, which INPI is today, to compete with ourselves. And that is the most important point to me, something that I'm working very much with at the Marx division, to do better what we do today based on tangible, measurable, and clear indices. So INPI has been increasingly perfecting its roles of concession of rights, especially in trademarks, and the development of non-traditional activities. We work with the expansion of IP, there's protection and trading. We need to provide a new architecture of choices to users with customized, up-to-date, quick services so that we can better serve users and interact with them. Having made this overview, I would like to share with you what our challenges are. Our strategic development over these past 4 months. If I asked what is the main challenge of INPI, let us talk about the demand boom. This is the number of filings we've had over the past few years, we can see there was an exponential increase. In 2016, we moved from 116,000 filings to 2022 with a projection of 414,000 filings. When I first joined the trademark division, we already had a pending stock of 312,000 requests, so the demand is higher than our ability to operationally respond in accordance with our productivity, efficiency, and process management parameters. A recent survey done at INPI pointed to the fact that we need 129 more staff, or 65%, without counting with the need for an increase in technological capital, which depends on our budget. So we can see that throughout the pandemic, the vision of Brazilian entrepreneurs was to create companies. This was a way companies found to survive. So there was a boom during the COVID pandemic, and fortunately we were fully prepared for that. We managed to put together a full-time home office type of work. And so if we consider the demand impact and our ability to work over the next few years, we can see there's a trend for an increase of 10% of filings per annum at least. And our productive capacity, which used to be an unsurmountable factor, is 255,000. And if we were to keep the same production factors that we would be using today or 4 months ago, we would arrive at 2027 at about 1.6 million requests in our backlog. That is equivalent to 5 years for reaching a decision, considering a situation where a technological capital or staff will not be increasing. And I bring in a second challenge, which perhaps is not as clear to everybody when we think about trademarks alone. But we also work with industrial design and geographic indications. We can see that there is lack of interest for filings for industrial design, both in Brazil and abroad. So I have this WIPO chart showing, in comparison to 2011, a progressive decrease of the use of the IP process for industrial design. Up to 2020, we had a 60% drop, and we can see that patents are approximately stable. Trademarks had a major boom, and as to volume, we have here an amount of Brazilians who still do not resort to the industrial design system, partially because of the procedures we used to use before. And we see Brazilians abroad. There was a decreasing number of Brazilians using the intellectual property system abroad, and as of 2019, with the pandemic, there is a change. But in 2019, before the pandemic, we see the number of filings by Brazilians abroad was greater than the number of Brazilians in Brazil. And that's an interesting number. And why was that the case? For what reason did Brazilian companies prefer to file abroad rather than resorting to INPI? This is an interesting fact.
This is an X-ray of that picture. 25 of the largest companies that registered abroad only 4 use the intellectual property system in Brazil. Yet another challenge, more integration in the global value chain through PI, or through IP rather. This is the need of having more insertion in the world arena. The Madrid Protocol was successful. In 2021, we are the 14th country. It's a very interesting rank when we take into account that there are 128 countries. We rank 36th as far as certifications goes. Let's shed some light on this. What can the INPI can do to make Brazilian companies become international? We have the agreement, the Hague Agreement, a very important agreement to which Brazil is a signatory, and we can be represented internationally there. We have to promote more integration to have access to markets and to attract investments. This is what Dr. Claudio mentioned. We have to build international innovation networks. This is the Brazil-Denmark project. It's a matchmaking exercise of companies, institutions, with international research institutes. We have 6 commercial proposals and also research efforts. And we have to connect to regional systems. Mercosur. We have seen time and time again, this is not seen in Brazil. How can INPI can export good practices? We had ex-PTO interested in learning more about our programs. We have to provide good quality training. Our IP Academy, metrics for both productivity and quality. And we have to deliver more value. We have that urgent need to boost our productivity and quality issues. We've seen that time and time again. It's clear in certain processes we have to improve to provide more legal security. We have to, therefore, deliver more value. We have to boost sales and trade so that Brazilian products can become added value products. The European Trademark Office stated that this work can add 253% more in international markets. It's an important share in exports to EU. Better services, more regulation. Brands, we have several challenges. New brands, innovative brands, non-traditional brands. So we have to have that interaction with users. So where do we stand? This is where we are and how we are regarded. Brands registrations, Brazil ranks 10th. There's a lot of companies interested in the Brazilian market. As far as registrations, we rank 12th. It's a very good score. That is proof of the importance of the Brazilian economy. Industrial designs, we are 18th. We are among the top 10 economies in the world. This is the latest result of a intelligence survey dealing with the management of brands. Brazil moved from the 41st. We're now ranked 6th. Can we get to the TM6? Do you believe Brazil can become a leader just like the US, China, Japan, South Korea, and Europe? This is the work we've been doing at the INPI. We want to become leaders in that arena. We rank 14th as far as added value is concerned. We did not include mediation in brand disputes. Some 4 months ago, we started to resuming that activity with a different model within the brand department. We did not get good scores in issues that related to costs. This is an initiative that has become one of the pillars of our administration. We are productivity champions. This is just outstanding. This is the commitment of INPI. Now let me start on the right. This is the number of brand requirements per month. We're up to par with US, Canada, Japan, UK. We have 263 decisions a month on average. That decision is taken in less than 28 minutes. How did you manage to get to that productivity level? That's the number we estimated for 2022. We have that progressive increase in productivity all the way to 2018. Civil servants, 4 civil servants left INPI. We were unable to provide good salaries, competitive salaries, and the legal framework that was appropriate. This is what we see. That was that decrease in 2020, mostly because of the pandemic, and we had to manage our macro processes properly. We did that with the process review team at INPI. In 2021, we managed to improve slightly those based on the Madrid Protocol. And in 2022, we revamped the entire system to leverage our current capacity. These are decisions related to 2022. We doubled our productivity in 2022. We had to adopt that strategy to face the latest developments. so that we could reach our goals, institutional goals. We had to make that arrangement to stretch our productivity even further, similar to those we had in 2016. I'm talking about the number of servants. We have a 40% increase in productivity. New horizons. That is the aggressive strategy I referred to at the beginning of my presentation. There's an interesting article by Drucker entitled, "How Can I Contribute? How can I help?" We have to determine or define daring goals that are meaningful, that are valuable. This is important in contemporary management. We have to establish that 18-month time frame based on indicators. This is what we did. We defined new institutional goals. We adjusted those factors that would impact productivity, 10 variables in total. Work teams, we had 16 teams. Some projects would last for more than 3 years. That would take more than 50% of the technical staff. We had to revise internally that dynamics. We had the support of our senior management. We had to realign and reallocate some of our staff, redefining their roles. We reassessed our management program. We had a performance-based bonus program. We had individual goals. If you could not reach that goal on a month, if they could in the following month to reach their goals of both months, they would get a bonus. That was used when we transitioned our systems. And then we were able to improve productivity. So we terminated that bonus system in agreement with all employees, and we therefore could improve the institutional productivity, therefore. We had new activities assigned to the leaders of these groups. 50% of that time was dedicated to the technical exam and 50% in supervision. That's the program called All Hands on Deck. This is data as far as the times are concerned. For requests, we are now similar to international standards. This is our response to you, to the market. We managed to increase productivity 107% of decisions more. I don't know whether you're familiar with that. 90% of all requests, 10% only with opposition. That's why I had to prioritize our times. 9 months, international standard, and 18 months when you have requests with opposition. That entailed an 18.6% increase when compared to last year. We have a 14% projection of increases, so we'll be able to reduce our backlog. This is very positive indeed. Industrial design had an increase of 9.8%, taking into account a 10% increase in requirements. We have the same level for productivity, but we have a forecast of a 233% increase for requirements with the INPI. Our goal for the year is 30 requirements. Increase in technological capital, applying AI at Durman. We're now already using some technologies. That's not hiring, it's cooperation. That's the word. It's a key word if you're willing to innovate. We changed that strategy. We need international cooperation using and the partnership with OMPI. We had some meetings, and we are going to use that this year to sort products and services, search for images for brands and industrial design. That partnership is making that possible. Semantic search. Our search engine remains very elemental, or elementary rather. Artificial intelligence to compare products and services. Products within the same industry, for example. Exams management, requests management. And we're about to implement our system to change that department and make it 100% digital. That's the digital industrial design. And we have an updated version of the OMPI system, bringing in new features to the system. We have replaced part of our team. We need reinforcements, so to speak. We have to hire permanent civil servants. The process has already started. We had to hire temps as well. They can work there for 5 years, working on special projects. Removal between agencies and recognition and a bonus program. The expansion of the use of the system nationally. We do have an iconic change in the innovation arena in Brazil. We have a new ID manual. It will be submitted to a public hearing. We took into account all the pain points defined by the market itself. things that were not properly addressed are now being properly treated. We want to integrate Brazil as a champion in the international arena. Let me share some examples. We are now going to accept lines in the design of products because we had a serious problem. We are now adopting international standards. Because of that minor change, the project would lose its priority. There is, of course, commercial interests in updating that analysis. We were not performing a proper analysis because we lacked the technical input. So we've updated that with INPI to give you that legal security. We're going to accept complex industrial design made up of several parts. Digital products and objects will have a specific graphic interface. Today, modern companies, there's no point in not having that kind of protection. Dynamic update graphic interface that is animated. So have an increase of 10 to 20% once these new features are implemented. The business connection, it's an important program for INPI. That's called INPI Negócios, INPI Business. Mentorship programs, training programs. We had an IP window shop, so to speak, and at the same time developing some matchmaking tools. So that is within our strategy. We are rebranding our department. It's more market-oriented, more focused on entrepreneurs. And that's why we are developing this new mentorship program, working with SEBRAE and local agency. That is the support network. Our ultimate goal is to make Brazilian companies become truly international. We have a good score in those international analyses. This is now data about the Madrid Protocol. This is to automate our exam system. We should be able to fully operate and use this tool. We are just finalizing the automation process. We're now adherent to the Hague Protocol. We're just pending Congress approval. This is by December to guarantee that will be fully automated by year's end, reducing bureaucracy. And Brazil may be included in the global brand database. Over 50 million requests from 70 countries, and Brazil is not included. We're now make that request in Geneva. So our markets will be more visible. You have APIs for third parties access. API is that interface, right, between systems, automated information sharing, user interface, a pre-deposit or a pre-register data that is made available to you, integration with regional databases. Brazilian companies will be present in other robust markets. We rank third in terms of banking information. We do have tools for that purpose. Now on to quality. That's our major challenge. In terms of quality, and we have to do better here. This is what I keep telling my leaders. We are 85.8% in terms of conformity. 2 samples at 6 months interval. We would rather have 5 samples. That conformity is within category 1. That will impact the legal security of our decisions. Our goal is to reach 96%. That is the level of the leading countries. So it's a huge challenge for all IP institutions throughout the world. Major offices are a little below 90%. The standardization of the exams processes with examiners and trainers, this is a concern to us. This involves brands that shouldn't be defended and ended up being so. Exams, procedures that were not performed. This is something we have to work on very diligently. We tripled our goal. We started out with 70 proposals for improvement, and now in 2022, I think we've already concluded 40 and 45, and the remainder related to brands. So our goal is to integrate a better quality product to both society and users. In terms of innovation and services and regulations, I'm not going to discuss these items in further detail, but these are proposals to change the IP law. We have a task force. We've identified 75 opportunities for improvement. Some have to do with sensitive issues. Here are just a few. How easy it is to register brands, how brands mature, secondary meaning. I don't know whether Miguel is here with us in this ballroom, but we decided to adopt that strategy of the secondary meaning exam even before that change in the IP law. Anyway, we do have tools to do that. We have country and the IP law per se that issue of exceptions. Anyhow, we do have procedures in place despite the legislative justification. So we're now addressing the system to properly serve the market. This is the way to go. These are non-traditional brands. We have about 60 cases just pending that exam. It's a small amount. As soon as we have the system implemented, we can address all of them very quickly. And our goal is to deliver the system by December. And this is another service. Brand positioning. We don't have to do that just like we did back in 2010, an organizational structure to address that. We would have some task force to address these issues because it's way more effective. It's a matrix organization. We have to define what the purpose of those exams are. Anyway, we have to have that harmony in everything we do so that we don't have the number of appeals and cases to pile up. Because we do have an expert on this business with us today here, Leonardo. He has that experience to help us address the problem. Well, I've spoken for way too long, but we do have a modern INPI, swift, with an open door policy, a direct connection with companies, society. We've already started conversations with several stakeholders. Our doors are open to talk to you, to listen to you, to know more about your pain points, and include them in everything we do. It should be called Dear Plus instead of Dear Mike. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Felipe. So happy to see this new INPI with such positive results. And Felipe's term started only 4 months ago, so it's great to see this new horizon for intellectual industrial property trademark registration, as well the start of this new administration with Felipe and Chairman Claudio Furtado, because they are allowing the INPI to be updated and engaging public officials to join in and also to compete with other industrial property firms around the world. So I'm very grateful to have this opportunity to be sharing this with you today. And now I'd like to introduce Dr. Leonardo, who will be talking about Felipe's talk. Leonardo is from Rio Grande do Sul. He's based in São Paulo. He holds a master's degree in IP law from Madrid University. He's an expert on business law and specializes on copyright and holds a diploma from Harvard Law School and entrepreneurship from INSPER and Rio Grande do Sul Federal University. He's currently a professor at the PhD course at IPS at Rio de Janeiro University. And your comments on Felipe's talk, please, Leonardo. And I just want to say thanks again. I'm very excited about the whole thing. Thank you, Antonella, for your kind introduction. And I want to thank the Brazilian Trademark Office for the invitation. Greetings to everyone in the room and to those of you joining us online. The topic of this event is Innovation and Society 5.0, and I'd like to use that as a basis to show you some indicators and global elements about innovation in IP firms around the world. And if we can conclude, like Felipe said during his very exciting talk, that we really are at the forefront of innovation when compared to other firms around the world. We really are on the right track when it comes to innovation. We can provide legal certainty that will allow more investments to be made in intellectual property in Brazil. We heard about challenges. Of course, we could have a whole panel on that. But as the basis for my talk, I will be using the World Trademark Review ranking, which looks at the different services offered online, value-added services and resources that go well beyond a trademark repository registration, and the communication of these initiatives, so we can see where Brazil stands. In short, what do they look at? Whether there are intelligent search engines that use disruptive technology, AI, blockchain, if there are alternative dispute resolution mechanisms, as Felipe said, if communication is made easier, if micro or SMEs can have access to credit lines, if digital tools stop working all the time, and whether these firms cooperate. Cooperation being the operative word. And so what are these firms doing in addition to just offering industrial property registration? Obviously, we need to consider the limitations of each of these locations, especially insofar as economic limitations go. The EU office has 50 million euros going towards cooperation alone and tools. That's what it provides to member states. But during the pandemic, we could see that the impact went well beyond what we had imagined on the economies as well as on our lives. And IP offices in general used the crisis to update and digitize their services. So these offices, and the INPI is one of them, go to show that the creative and innovative industry are much more resilient than others in other sectors of the economy. So the number of trademark applications around the world increased by 15%. The ID applications increased exponentially as well. A bit less, but it's still an indicator that this is definitely moving forward. Most offices used to have unstable online services in 2017, and that has gone down to 3% only now. So we can conclude that there is no turning back when it comes to investing in innovation. I personally identified 4 shared initiatives by the best performing offices, namely Korea, the European office in Singapore, followed by the UK office. But the first of these 4 pillars is the adoption of disruptive technologies. It is true that the pandemic accelerated the need for automation and digitization, but we also need to consider that IT has made progress, considerable progress. We have better algorithms and more data availability, and shared data also allow us to have more accurate results by using such technologies. We don't need to go into any level of detail about what Korea, Singapore, and Japan isn't on the list, but we know that it does use these technologies and they achieve great results. Korea was a pioneering user of blockchain and other disruptive technologies, and they've achieved fantastic results. If we look beyond that, 28 minutes at the INPI, if we consider singularity, one day this test will take a fraction of that. And that means we will be saving time, and time is money. The European office has also been adopting image recognition technologies that use deep learning. Recently, the European office started using a system that when the application is submitted, the system already presents a search and automatically shows you the results and informs the applicant of what might happen when making the application for the trademark registration. In the future, we will have sound trademarks, smell trademarks, holographic trademarks. And without technology, without a system that is better than humans, we will not have security. Technology will provide us with legal certainty.
Well, the International Intellectual Property Association is working with several offices sharing technology. There's an initiative at WIPO, that is the IP offices, that make things a lot easier, especially for those developing countries that are willing to implement those tools. The second topic is cooperation. We can no longer afford to think about any market asset without cooperation. Signing of treaties, sharing the knowledge is key. This is so important because the #1 spot at the EU was achieved by taking that into account. More than 50 bilateral trade treaties. This, of course, has a very positive impact. Third issue is communication. Again, there's no point in having of all these technologies if we cannot speak the language of the market, the language of users. We have to understand what the needs are. And once we do that, we'll be able to be successful in that communication. Jerry Tang mentioned that at that conference. IP should be relevant to everyone, everywhere. There's that notion that IP is not for all companies. I should invest in IP later on. That's not the case. We all know that very well. We have to speak the language that our audience will be able to understand. So to try to establish that closer contact with SMEs, they account for 90% of companies worldwide. So these initiatives have to take them into account. We have to learn how to speak with the young people. The IP International Day had that as a theme, using social media to try to teach what IP is all about. I'll wrap up. We have to go to schools to send that message. And ESG, diversity and inclusion. We need more diverse and inclusive systems. The UK, for instance, established ESG as one of its goals, an inclusive agency that can replicate the society we aim to serve. There was a presentation that was interesting, diversity as an intangible asset. And last but not least, women. It's just wonderful. We are heading the right direction. And climate change. And why climate change is important. If we do not address that issue, nothing else matters. That's a matter of life and death. We have interesting examples from the UK, and their goal is to have a net zero office in 5 years. And we have that agreement with WIPO Green. I would like to congratulate INPI because of that major transformation you're going through. We hope to improve even better. That mediation aspect is very important. And within that strategic goals of INPI, let me point out the quality and the legal security. That's what we aim for. We do hope that the present can give us solutions for the future so that we have more flexibility as far as investments go and make Brazil an even more competitive country. Thank you. We have just 2 minutes for questions. How do you address contradictions to people and the company's directives? That is a daily concern on our part. We try to harmonize different views that we still see at the INPI. INPI is a large office. We have over 100 people, 122 to be precise. 96 dealing with exams. It's unlike Denmark. We have 20 examiners. They're all in a room. you establish a joint assessment system, and then you start operating. It's more complex for us because of the volumes. We have a much larger volume of cases. We have to work on training our staff, and our goals include individual time dedicated to training per se. This is a matter of concern, indeed. And we perform a constant update of procedures. Oftentimes, we are faced with new cases, and that impacts our internal processes. The University of Strasbourg has an excellence center. We renewed, actually, at the General Assembly at OMPI, we renewed that partnership. We now extended that possibility to use the University of Strasbourg to train our people. We've already sent people there. So this is an ongoing activity. Our examiners are constantly being trained, especially to conduct that preliminary X-ray activity, so to speak. We're at 85%. We're not pleased with that number. We know that we have to do better, and we are aiming at 96%. It's important to use the resources you already have, and if it is properly used, and that coupled with a desire to change, it can only yield positive results to you and to all of us. We have time for just one more question. Good afternoon. You talked about automating INPI processes. Quality has always been good. What about a margin for error? Once you automate the process, have you seen an increase in the number of errors? How do you address that issue to make sure you are efficient and, of course, doing right the first time? Thank you for your question. That question has to do with my previous answer, actually. There are cases. Dr. Marcia Nunes gave us some examples of decisions that did not use the best technique possible. There are some occasional mistakes. We perform 303,000 technical decisions a year. That's the goal for 2022. We had 255,000 last year. So these mistakes are only natural based on that focus on productivity. I don't think it's a matter of trade-off, productivity and quality. I think we can strike a balance there, maintaining reasonable standards, having high performance while maintaining good quality standards. We worked hard to manage processes and procedures, but we're still developing quality indicators. to establish parameters and conformity levels. And the brands department is at the forefront. As you just showed in your presentation, we have moved a long way as far as quality is concerned. We're just finalizing the indicators. For the action plan in 2022, sponsored by our president, myself, Dr. Ana, the executive director, and we'll have some deliverables by March next year to have a system to analyze the quality. Based on that system, we'll be able to have a more accurate sample, actually using more robust criteria as far as quality is concerned, and I agree with that, with you. I'm sure that the brands and the Brazilian Office of Intellectual Property work with state-of-the-art indicators. That 85% I showed you, it's a preliminary analysis using that 6-month interval. I don't know whether that information is 100% accurate. We have to conclude that sampling process, we need 4 to 5 samples. We have to have a bigger sample to come up with more realistic conclusions. Thank you. Next year, you're coming back to bring even more new information. It's just outstanding to see how much we have evolved so that Brazil can be part of the international market. Thank you once again.